Okay, so you love Second Life, but you can't sit there all day waiting for someone to come by and talk to you. Fortunately, you don't have to. If you use Lotus Sametime, which is like Messenger on steroids, you can create an object that lets people talk to you, live, when you're not in world. And it's two-way, so you can either talk back to them or just show up. This tutorial is going to show you how to do that. Basically, you're going to create a Java servlet and a Second Life script, and if you're like me, you'll also need a PHP proxy. The first step is to create a bot, which is like a mini client that runs in the background and responds to events like people talking to it. A simple example would be a Magic 8-Ball type of thing, where people ask a question and it responds with a random answer. But we're going to take that a step further. You'll need some Java classes, which are part of the Sametime toolkit, which you can download for free from IBM. You'll use them to create the bot object. The object keeps track of things like the service and the session, but it also has a queue to track what people have said to it. So when you instantiate the bot, you start by creating the session, logging in, and so on. The bot runs in a thread, so you'll also start that up. Now remember, I said it's based on events, so you'll create methods that respond to events like being logged in, which tells the bot to start listening for other events. The first event you're listening for is the I am received event, which basically starts the conversation, but more importantly gives you a hook into the conversation for later. The most common event would be having somebody talk to you, in which case you're going to add that to the queue. And that's really it for getting text from Sametime. Now we just have to have a way for the servlet to get messages into and out of the bot, and we can do that with get messages, which outputs the queue, and tell Sametime, which sends an outside message to the Sametime window. We won't use the rest of these methods, but we do have to implement them. Next, we'll create the servlet. You want to start by creating the bot as a static object, so that the server creates it the first time you run the servlet, and then it just sits there in the background, waiting for future requests. When you create it, you'll need to give it the server name, the account name, and the password. I created a Sametime account with my avatar name, but you can use whatever you like. Now, except for the first time you run it, every time you call the servlet, you're doing one of two things. You're giving Sametime a message from Second Life, or you're getting messages from Sametime for Second Life. And the servlet distinguishes between the two based on the arguments that you feed it. Next, you'll need the Linden script for Second Life. The Second Life script is pretty straightforward. When the object hears somebody say something, it'll send that text to Sametime by making an HTTP request, and every 15 seconds, it'll make another HTTP request to check for messages from Sametime. That does mean there's a delay in the conversation, but even 15 seconds might be a little stressful on the grid if enough people were doing this, so don't do it any more often. Now when somebody talks near the object, it fires the listen event, so you make an HTTP request. You can call the servlet directly, but if you're like me, Java hosting isn't available, so instead I'm going to write that text out to a file on my web server and call it with a proxy, which we'll see in a minute. And the request gets assigned an ID. Now every 15 seconds, the script executes the timer event, which again can call the servlet directly, or in this case can call a PHP script that reads that queue off of my website. And both of these requests are asynchronous, which means that the script goes along its merry way, and when the response comes back, it fires the HTTP response event, which checks to see which request it's for. If it's for the timer, it takes the text, if there is any, and says it, so you see it in Second Life. If it's for the listen event, meaning it's what the object heard, we don't need to do anything. Now again, the ideal situation would be for Second Life to communicate directly with the servlet, but that's not always an option. So instead, I've got two files on my web server. One is the queue from Sametime, and the other is the queue from Second Life. The proxy just relays these queues from one to the other. First it checks for messages from Sametime, and if there are any, it calls the sendSTQ script, which adds them to the file second life checks every 15 seconds. Next, it checks for messages from second life, which it sends to the queue for Sametime to pick up. Finally, we want the proxy to run on its own, so we can set it so that the browser reruns it every 15 seconds. In Second Life, you need to attach the script to an object for it to run. I've already got an object set up, so let's look at adding the script to it. Start by right-clicking the object and choosing Edit. Scripts are in the Content tab, so go there and click the New Script button. When it appears, double-click the script to open the editor. You can write your scripts directly in the editor, of course, but I prefer to use an outside editor. Either way, get the script into the editor and save it, and then you can go on and close the information window. Okay, now you're ready to go. I've got Sametime integrated into my Trillion Pro installation, and I've got the bot on my contact list, so the first step is to call the servlet. I'm just running this locally, so for me the Tomcat server in Eclipse is fine. Notice that the bot is not logged in to start with, but once you run the servlet it shows up as online. That's the bot running in the context of the server. Go ahead and start up a session. Remember, we programmed the bot to respond to the IM received event, so you should see that message in the window. And if you need to, go ahead and start up the proxy. Now we're set to go. I can send a message in Sametime, and it shows up in Second Life. I can also send a message in Second Life, and it shows up in Sametime. Now we're all set. The system is running, so I can go ahead and do my work on documents, and so on. And if someone shows up in Second Life and talks to, or rather near, the object, it'll show up in my Sametime window, which will flash at me. That's my friend Troy. I didn't tell him we were going to use a Victrola rather than a telephone for this. So I can go ahead and answer, and he'll see it. Or I can take that as a cue that I need to go back in world. Now I'm already logged in, but you don't have to be. The script will run without you. Notice that with the delay, I actually beat the message, but that's fine. So there are lots of things that you can do with a script like this. If you're logged in and just hanging out, you can attach it to an object that you wear, such as a wristband or a necklace, and it will let you know if one of your friends stops by and talks to you. If you run a store, you can set it up as a bell on a counter, and even if you're not logged in, users can touch the bell to ring it, and you get notified so you can log back in and take care of them. That way you don't have to pay somebody to watch your store for you. You don't even have to attach the script to some external object. For example, I could have attached the script to the table rather than putting the Victrola out. There are all sorts of possibilities. The important thing is that using Sametime, some Java, and maybe a little bit of PHP, you can stay connected in Second Life without having to mess up your first life.